Hey everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's me, Jen The Rainmaker, coming to you live with Leena Mendoza, the founder of Intentional Leadership. I'm so excited to have her with us today and to talk about Christ consciousness. We're going to talk about dream planting. We're going to talk about just things that normally, like a conversation that me and her have had many times. Leena is a friend and she is one of the most amazing people that I know. She is kind, she is sincere, she has integrity, she is wise. She's one of the most supportive people that I know of everybody that she comes into contact with. There's this saying that says, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And I believe that Leena lives by that. And I wanted her to come on today to talk to us about Christ consciousness. We're going to talk a little bit about, different religions, but we're going to talk about Christianity more specifically. I grew up and my mom gave me one of the greatest gifts. That was the gift of supporting my curiosity and allowing me to study many different religions. In my course, Dream You University, I teach the traditional practices of my Chichimeca and Toltec ancestors who believe that our dreams create our waking reality. And I teach these practices that have been passed down for thousands of years through our oral tradition. And in my university, I have people of different faiths, cultures, beliefs, religions. And I think it's just really important that for me, being on this path of reaching my greatest destiny is being open to having conversations with people that have different beliefs, different faiths, because you start to see the similarities between all of them. No matter how they came to be, there are definitely some similarities. And I wanted to have this conversation with Leena in front of everybody, and she was gracious enough to accept my invitation. So without further ado, Leena Mendoza, thank you so much for joining me today and for being willing to have this conversation with everybody.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much, Jen. You're an incredible, leader, and then also guide for us, and spiritual leader. And I think that's very important for us to know that who you are and how you serve. And so you definitely have a gentle spirit. I always say that you're very peaceful, and I think that definitely during during this time, as we're going through a global challenge, is really identifying how we describe success. And so I think it's important to know that peace should be part of your description, if not wholly. So, completely, right? And so some of us are searching for this higher level of income, and we think abundance is money, and it can be, but really how peace and freedom is priceless. And so you teach that, you live that. I mean, even in your backdrop, so even in how we visualize you brings a sense of peace and serenity. And so I was honored to have heard you speak first time at Facebook. And so here we are on Facebook platform, but actually meeting you at Facebook headquarters, and then seeing you in full action, and how and what you provide in Dream You University. So it's been an honor to continue to meet you, but also to continue to cultivate our relationship and learn so much from you. And so we always have these golden nuggets when we talk, and I'm like, let me write that down. And so thank you so much for the invite. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I absolutely love about Intentional Leadership, the company that you have founded, is one of the principles in dream planting is first, it is intention, right? Because I hear a lot of times people talk about your mindset, and you have to have your mindset right and all of these things, but what was it before mind that created the mindset, right? What was that seed that we had? If we look at that, in our tradition, we talk about commanding the movement or being commanded by the movement. So one of the universal laws is that everything is in movement. And it said that if you don't command the movement, you're commanded by it, right? Meaning that you're just going to be this ship, and your sail is going to constantly be like this, instead of you being there actually commanding which direction you're going to go in. So one of the first things that I tell people is that in the morning when you wake up, you have to command the movement. What is it that you want to get out of the day? What is it that you want to accomplish? And it doesn't have to be these production based accomplishments that many of us are used to. Yesterday, I shared my mom's to do list and I absolutely love it. I'm like, many of you ask me how I am the way that I am. And I'm like, it's because of this woman right here. And so, part of her to do list was count my blessings, be productive yet calm, be grateful. And then she has these affirmations like, I am love, love flows through me, all of these things. And in our home, we actually have a gratitude wall. So one of our daily practices is we have post-its and we'll write down what it is that we are grateful for. My daughter, like, I'm grateful for my health, I'm grateful for my family, like all these sorts of things, right? But in the morning, before we even get out of bed, it's like we should have an intent of what it is that we want in our life. And again, the to do doesn't have to be these production based things, it can be having more enriching relationships with my family. Like, for me it's about deepening the relationships that I have, right? Helping my students accomplish their goals. It is about being present, being in the moment. It is about having more peace and more joy and love and laughter, because to me, and creating amazing memories, because these are the things that when we look back, right? Like these are the things that I feel are part of this enriching life. These are the qualities that I feel are part of a dream life, not just these, oh, more money and success and all these things. Like, no, like what are the things that are going to really matter at the end of our life, right? So better health, so that we can actually enjoy these things. So I want to talk to you about your idea of, intentional leadership and how that came to be, how you even got that name, because I think it's such a huge part. I say commanding the movement, but really it's about having that intent.
Right. So it's interesting that you asked that. And so, because we're talking about dream planting and faith. And so my first initial name was going to be Halo Consulting. So it was going to be a Halo Leadership. And it was going to be like a circle around the name, like, the halo, right? And so really providing that positive spin. And I wanted to provide it in some faith capacity. And so, and then I was like that, I was like, that doesn't even make sense. I go, what does that mean, halo? And so I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it means. It means halo, like Beyonce. It makes sense to me.
Right.
So I say it because as it evolved to intention, so it actually came from I learned about being intentional from my two aunts. And so who are married and they're amazing. And they spoke, shared the book, The Four Agreements. And so, being impeccable with your word, breaking agreements. So it's funny that might be entering into that conversation today. And so, but really being intentional. And so sometimes we think things happen by luck, right? Oh, I'm so lucky. And I'm like, no, you actually prepared for that. And so things are going to fall into my lap, and they're, and so I'm sure even my people, when things good happen to you, like Jen's so lucky. And it's like, no, like
Yeah.
she plans for that. And so I think it should no longer be a secret, right? And it really should be taught more, stated more, and really. So when you wake up, what is your intention? I'm going to meet amazing people today. So if you wake up and you think, oh my gosh, it's going to be terrible, we have a global crisis, you're going to have a bad day. You're speaking that into existence, and you're intentionally speaking that to existence. So when you intend to say something different, more positive over yourself and your life, and it's helpful. And so in the Bible, and it says, that words can be death. And so how you intend to speak and how you intend to live are an important part of leadership. And so leadership is not a position. It's really how you serve, your role and your responsibility, and how you serve through humbleness and humility. And so I state that often because it's my personal definition, but also I encourage others to have a higher level of conscience. And so identify what your level of, what your definition of leadership is. And so I believe as leaders, we have to be intentional with who we connect with, how we use our energy, how we think, and how we dream plant. And so also, how we plan for our future. And so it's not by accident. There's information out there on the internet. And so I say that there's a gap there. There's knowledge and application. So what are we doing to apply that to better ourselves and to better our community? So this is information that's free for you at hand. And this is a great opportunity for us to intend to do much better and to serve in a higher capacity.
Mhm. I love that what you said words can bring death, right? For us in dream planting and in many of the different religions that I have studied, they talk about the importance of the breath, the spirit, right? When we're born, we take that first breath. It's like some people say that's when your spirit is actually entering your body, is at that first breath. And in the tradition, we talk about the four winds, like these inner winds, and we actually dream plant with them. But what I have come to realize with that is that there's also this idea that in the tradition, we are either speaking flowers or we're speaking arrows. And there's said to be there's a story of the underworld. And one of our underworlds is these arrows that are hunting us, all of the things that we are speaking into existence that are coming back around, right? To like hit us. And so it's asking, are we speaking arrows or are we speaking flowers? Are the words that we say going to blossom with beauty? Are they going to help us on our path, or are they going to come around and harm us?
Right.
There's also this idea though, because one of the winds that we work with clears obstacle and thorns. And so I tell people, when you speak your word, you're either clearing the obstacles and thorns from your path, or you're creating obstacles and thorns on your path.
Right.
I believe that the words that we speak oftentimes, they limit us.
Right.
We're part of this limitless. We're part of something so amazing that oftentimes it's not feasible to people about what is actually possible. So I believe in like unlimited possibilities, right? And tapping into the infinite, or what some people would call Christ consciousness as well, to be able to create consciously, to be
Right.
able to elevate. And so I think it's so important that, and we question the things that we say as well. You and I were having the conversation um, about working hard, right?
Yes.
We had talked about this. I want you to share that story about working hard, the conversation that we had about that.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And so, this might be a pain point for some people. So I really encourage you to reflect on this, on our conversation. So with Jen and I, and specifically at this point. And so I have been taught to work hard. And I mean, work hard where, you're a woman, you have to work harder than your male counterparts. And how many of you heard this? If you're a minority, you better work hard and you better earn your keep, and your white counterparts will judge you on that. And so, and so I even heard another friend who's finishing her doctorate share that, and she's African American. And then she's like, saying that she has to work hard. And I said, but I go, why our white counterparts don't say that? I said, they, they produce, they promote, and they have a team of people, and they don't go home at 10 o'clock at night. They don't even think that's even an expectation. Like they're like, so I share that because whatever culture, so that could be office culture, it could be, so corporate culture, is it ethnic culture? Is it family values that were passed down to you that you believe that this is true? And up until I was started understanding and practicing dream planting, I was sharing that. I mean, I'm like, girl, you better work twice as hard. You're Latina, échale. And so I say that in Spanish. And even my students who didn't speak English were like, échale, Miss Mendoza. And so, they didn't speak Spanish. And so I'm like, and really, I really want to reframe that and rebuild from that. And it's like, it does not have to be, because you asked me that question, you stated that when you transition into being self-employed and being a consultant, was it hard? And I was like, and my automatic knee-jerk reaction was like, yes, girl. And then I'm like, no, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And so she's like, and then I had to think about that. And there's even times where I even start at the forefront of my mind, right? So here's the intention. You have to be intentional with your thought. I'm like, man, this is hard. And I'm like, no, it's not hard. It's like you have the information, you have the partnerships. And so what are you doing to intend to align those, for your future? And so it's really, that's not a good belief system. It is not something we should pass down to our children. So in the Christian faith, we call that a stronghold. And so some people that don't know what that word is, I'm like, that's actually in the Bible. It tells you like, seek life, right? That's breaking a stronghold. And so when you have a belief system that's terrible like that, it's not just like, poof, like I'm awesome, right? So some people go to therapy, that's okay. But you have to pray over it. You have to break that stronghold. And it's a mess. It's hard because it's almost like a very nasty internal battle, but it's in the faith world, we call that a spiritual warfare. It's because it's going to go down. So when is it going to go down? And so in dream planting, it's also a process. And so it's not something, it's because you've believed that for such a long time. And my commitment is, and my intention is to not pass that down anymore to my son, who's 25, to friends, to colleagues, to clients. Like, you need to work hard. And so it's not working hard, it's being intentional. And so I'm taking all the information and really being intentional and dream planting and planning for that, for a creative future, for an innovative future, for an intentional future. And so what if you intend rather than, oh, it's a hot mess. So it's not a hot mess. And so you can help navigate through that. And so it's definitely a very unhealthy. So I would explain like bondage or stronghold, like chains around you, and there's a padlock. So, it's very, it's very naive of us to think a padlock like that can just be like, poof, like be gone, right? And so, because there's so much, so it's almost like every time you heard or I heard, right? Like, you have to work hard. Someone added a new padlock. And every time I stated it, so you could almost say every time I stated it to Jen or somebody else, I added 2 padlocks. Because not only did I say it to them, I also was like, yep, like you got to work hard, girl. And so boop, boop, that's 2 more padlocks. And so how many padlocks do I have that break me, that hold me down? And so those padlocks get broken, right? And released, you get released to freedom and to abundance through dream planting and as you pray. And so I firmly believe there's a very strong alignment and when it comes to dream planting in the Christian faith. And so that's the best image I can give you. So what strongholds do you have for generational curses? You're very consistent in explaining that. And some people are like, I don't have any generational curses. I'm like, what did your mom or dad or grandma and grandpa say? Or who was your caretaker? If you didn't have parents, was it your foster care parents? What did they say to you? Did they say to you, like, you need to work hard, like you're a foster care kid, or, you're a woman. And so hearing that, we believe that suffrage is acceptable. So, and it's no, like who wants to walk around with a padlock with some like chains but you carry that in corporate, you carry that in your family, and those need to be like rejected and those need to be released so that you can have your real dreams come true. But you have to work on those things, because that's what holds you back from abundance is that lockdown. So
yeah, for us, we say that there is this invisible prison of the moon, because we believe the dreams create the reality. So when we go to sleep, it's the energy of the moon that is out, right? And so oftentimes when people are not dreaming and they're not conscious when they're dreaming, we say that those are part of the walking dead. They're not living a conscious life. And people don't realize that Mexico actually means navel of the moon. So Mexica means like people of the navel of the moon. Those are actually those that are practicing the dream warrior practices. And, you talked about the spiritual warfare. So we don't use that term, but we do talk about like the spiritual battle, right? And one of the people that we battle is ourselves. It is the inner saboteur. It is the subconscious that has been programmed, because brain science shows us that 95 to 97% of everything that we do comes from the subconscious programming that we picked up from the age of 0 to 7. And then we, of course, pick up other subconscious programming as we're in our jobs or with our peers or with our family and all these things, or relationships as we go throughout our life. And for me, I know that people would say things, but I would question the things that people would say, because especially when everybody kind of says the same thing, I'm really questioning my belief in that, right? People say love hurts. And I'm like, love doesn't hurt. Love is the purest emotion there is. Cheating hurts. being betrayed hurts, being lied to hurts, but love doesn't hurt. And you might experience those things if you love somebody, but that's not love. That's not right. That's coming from a place of trauma. That's coming from a place of fear. That's coming from a place of ancestral things that have been passed down. And part of the work that we do in dream planting is looking at our ancestral issues that have been passed down from generation to generation. And whether you know those things or not, you can still work on them. You can still be freed from them, and even there's this idea of the working hard, right?
Right.
I believe that sort of rest is the new revolution, because especially for those of us that have slavery in our bloodline, for those of us that have experienced colonization through the ancestry, there is this trauma of being overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, that has been passed down through the bloodline. And literally, our lives were at stake if we didn't work hard, if
Right.
we didn't work from morning until night and all of these sorts of things.
Right.
And so that's actually coded within the day, and within the DNA, we call it the Moyo Koyani. And part of what we're doing is we are releasing those things. We are freeing ourselves from those things to free our ancestors, our present generations, and our future generations from those things. And I often have to question myself and even the things that I say to my daughter. There were times when just having different experiences with her, right, as she was like really young. And there was a time when I was struggling financially. And during that time, she never knew that, right? If she would ask for something, I would never tell her that. And I would always ask myself, okay, how can we have these things? It was never like we don't have, or we can't have, or we can't do. It was, how can we? And through that questioning, I believe that that opens up space for the creator, for our subconscious to go to work, to begin to free us from that, to begin to show us those answers. And so for people that are struggling, I tell them, ask your subconscious those things as you're going to sleep at night. Like, how can I take that trip I've always wanted to take? How can I have a better relationship with my child or my partner? How can I have more joy or peace? How can I free myself and my ancestors from the strongholds that have been placed on us, right? As you're drifting off to sleep, because the hypnagogic state, which is the state right as we're drifting off to sleep, is one of the most powerful times to begin to reprogram the subconscious. And whether you want to call it your subconscious, or whether you want to call in the energy of the creator, or Jesus of Nazareth, or Buddha, or Allah, it really doesn't matter. I feel that it has to be what resonates with you, right? And that's one of the other reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I think it's so important that what works for somebody won't necessarily resonate and work for the other person. But I just think it's so important to be inclusive, right, in our beliefs and the languages, and what it is that each individual, being respectful of what that person prays to or believes in. And so I wanted to talk with you a little bit more about that too, because you and I have had this discussion of dream planting and Christianity. And you've shared some things with me that I wasn't even aware of. And so I wanted you to kind of share those things, some of the private conversations that we have had with everybody that is listening right now.
So,
Clarity.
so anybody has any, so I was, it's interesting because I went through the same process. So if anybody has like apprehensions, or they're like, that doesn't align with my Christian faith. And so, I went through that same process. And so it was my two aunts who were like, they would say the universe. And I was taught by other Christian, friends, and they were like, ooh, girl, that is not Jesus. And so I was like, well, Jesus made the universe, so that kind of makes sense. So, right. And so instead of educating myself, or, and it wasn't even people that I really trusted, like I wouldn't like, they were more like affiliates. And so, and then really in the Christian faith, it's about also about knowledge and wisdom, right? And so, and people don't read the Bible, or, they don't know that. And so they don't know what is there. And so it's important for us to educate ourselves, and to, I love how you say inclusion, because, it's really about being inclusive, and then also being aware and in what's out there. So dream planting is huge in the Bible. So Joseph is the, like, probably next highly sought after character in the Bible, after Jesus. And so Joseph's story is about dreaming. And how many of us have had these dreams and goals, and we're like, "Ooh, I'm going to be a CEO," or, I'm going to have 10 houses, and people are like, "Girl, you don't have $10." And so, and then you stopped. And so that's exactly what happened to Joseph in the Bible. He is credited to have almost the similar characteristics as Jesus in the Bible. And so I've studied that. And so what happened with Joseph is that he had continued to lead like that, where he even went to prison and he had to show his leadership ability. But again, he ended up becoming king. They rid him off. The brothers were like, we'll just act like he died, and like he just got ate up, and oh well. And they believed that. And so here he actually rose to have his own kingdom, and he forgave them and he led them. And so there's a whole play on it. It's called Joseph the Dreamcoat. It's colorful. Why? Because your dreams are colorful. And so, and it tells you things, right? And so he had started out saying, "Hey, I'm having these dreams," and they're like, like, so I'm gonna say in Spanish, "That's loco," like, but he's crazy. And even when they share it in church, they say it like, "What the heck?" Like, and they share that and saying, and then to resonate with you, person, how many times have you been kind of knocked down for your own dreams? And so that's essentially what we're doing when we don't open our mind and be inclusive to dream planting when it comes to our faith, because it doesn't mean that, that's not a part of our religious faith. I mean, that's not what that is. So I would articulate it like you're blocking your blessing from your dreams to manifest. And so money is the most written word in the Bible. And people go, "I didn't know that." I'm like, look, actually, if you look up what's the most written word in the Bible, it should be there in Google. But why do I say that? It's because it's not money. It's not, I mean, the word is money, but it's abundance, right? So God talks about abundance. He even says, with God, all things are possible. So that means limitless. So people were like, they're like, "No, it doesn't." No, it just means that God could hook me up. I'm like, right. But if God could hook you up, then that means it's right, unlimited, right? And so if you believe that, do you truly believe that? And so it's written there, but people don't believe that. And they're like, "Was that in the Bible?" I'm like, "It's in the Bible." And so why do I share money in abundance? Is because God wants you to, have an abundant life. But us as believers don't really believe, because we're like, "Oh, we're all right." And it's really about having that abundant mindset, but also having that responsibility with our abundance, and then how we give. And how do you truly live as an abundant person? You give, right? So it teaches you that. So that's why it's in there. And people are like, "It doesn't say that." I'm like, just scan, just scan. And so you don't have to read the whole book, but conceptually, I mean, and in the Bible written, that's what it is. And in dream planting, it's the same. It's abundance. It's dream planting that, and learning to give. You always want it. You asked me that. What is your goals to, as a like a giver, right? And being abundant. And I said, well, I want to be a donor. I want to. And then you said angel investor. I want to be an investor, right? And she's like, and you go angel investor. I was like, oh, that wasn't on my radar, but okay, yeah. And so, because I was like, well, yeah, if you're in the Silicon Valley and you're making impact on the globe, why not make that a goal, right? And so I was a few years back thinking, if I could give $1,000 to my college, I'm the university that invested in me. And so now my dream planting is much larger, and how I want to give and how I want to strategically be intentional about that. And so so it's just the dream planting is in the Bible. Dreaming is in the Bible. And I shared with you as well a woman that I had met who's prophetic. And so if you're not familiar with people who have spiritual gifts, she has a gift of prophecy. So her and her husband, and so she would interpret dreams. And so you will see her, you may not see her as a Christian person, because you might not think that that's a Christian faith. So she would do that at the fair and interpret your dreams, but she has a very strong prophetic gift. And so she can interpret what your dreams are. So that is also done in Christianity. And so people are like, "No, it's not." I'm like, well, maybe not in your church, or you've not heard of that, but doesn't mean that we don't do that. And so, but again, if we close our heart and our mind to how a higher level of conscience and the abundance, then you're blocking your blessing, and you're And there's so much out there, and God wants so much out there for us. And but we're just like, no, that's not what it says. And I'm like, you don't read the Bible, so like before you quote something, read it first. And so, and just know that this is all comes from a perspective of love and abundance, and that's also in the Bible. So dream planting is about love and abundance, and it's very aligned with our thoughts and our belief system in the Bible. It's not separate. It's not separate at all. There are no parameters in religion. And so I think sometimes we get in our religious box and we're like, that's not what it is. And I'm like, maybe we should say what it is, and see that. And see those, not only the potential, but the full capacity of that's there. And so it's been definitely enlightening to me. I love it. And, learning through the process and seeing, and learning these ancestral gifts that you've been given and sharing that with us. And so, I'm just like, and I'm seeing these consistent patterns. And, it's funny because when I tell you, I'm like, what, girl, people didn't know Joseph in the Bible. And you're like, what do you mean? I'm like, he didn't have a dream and they hated on him. So I said it like that slang, because I mean, however you articulate, like that's what it is. And so, I make it funny because it's like, don't come in. I was that person. I was like, the girl, that is not Jesus. And so, but I didn't know Jesus like that back then either. So I could just tell you what it's not, but I can tell you what it is now. And so, and how I've studied it, and how and I love that my aunts, they said, Leena, do you know this is in the Bible? And then I was like, so my aunties who say, right, universe, explain that to me. And, and I trust them, I love them, and I believe that. And so, and then she, and then really understanding, even from my own religious standpoint, in some capacities, I stood on my own religious box. I'm like, oh no, that's not what it is. And it's like, maybe I need to read this and understand. And then I did. And then I was like, oh my God, like they were hicka right. But I mean, really, because I trust them, and I know they have good intentions for me. So I was like, and then all those couple of years that I had believed that, I didn't know those people like that.
Mm-hmm.
People were like kind of like low key haters, I guess. I don't know, but they didn't. I don't love them like I love my aunts.
Right.
And so I was like, you know what? Like legit, like they gave me some information and they helped me break those strongholds with that belief system. So that's definitely how those, that I was taking the steps towards that abundance, and then believing that. I think culturally we have those kind of beliefs as well. This, you're okay where you're at, don't try to be greedy. And I'm like, who says that? Like, that does not, that, so they had shared with me our family belief systems too. And I was like, oh, let me write that down. And so there was a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. To be released from. And, it's interesting too. I love what you said about the dreams, right? Because we have these dreams that we have at night, and dreaming is a big part of the Bible. I've seen it, Daniel, Joseph, right? There were so many stories of dreams, and Daniel, like dream interpreters, right? And you and I have the conversation about people that have spiritual gifts, the gifts of prophecy, the gift of, what were some of the other gifts that you shared with me?
So gift of administration. And so there's, I think like 15 gifts. So if you look up the gifts of the spirit, or spiritual gifts, and you can take an assessment online. And so there's different gifts, gift of prophecy, gift of administration. I can't think of all of them right now, but there's about 15 of them. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I remember we were looking at that and having the conversation about that. And, I loved what you said about, they were hating on him, right? They were hating on his dream. Joseph had this like big dream, and he saw what his future was going to be. And so many people, they get hated on for their dreams, whether it is a dream, a desire that they have in their heart, right? Or whether it is this dream that they're having because his was actually that dream that he had while he was sleeping. But for us, we believe, again, dreams are creating reality. And you had even texted me, you're like, you know what, I just realized, like, I've had a bunch of dreams and they have happened. The things that I dreamed have happened. And I said, yeah, because you said deja vu, and I go, we call it dream ja vu. So when you have something in your life and you feel it's familiar, and you have this idea of, I feel like this has happened before, it's because it has. It's because you dreamed it. First the dream, right? It's the dream. Like, I believe that the creator had a dream.
Yep.
right? And I believe that it was the dream that came before the reality. It was the dream, it was the intent that came before it is what we are experiencing.
Right.
And I have always believed in the power of dreaming. I used to sleep as a kid, I used to sleep a lot, and my family would tease me, like you're always sleeping. And it's like, I'm working in the dream world, like I'm getting stuff done. Nobody really understood that, right? But I come from actually a long line of prophetic dreamers. And my mom, she would always give me these gifts of quotes and dreaming. And like even this, cup that I have, it's like move boldly towards your dreams, right? From my mom, always, always, always reinforcing that. And I just, for me, it's just having the awareness and opening people up to that, because sometimes religious energy can prevent us, right, from actually reaching the Christ consciousness, which
Mhm.
is one of the goals I believe in religion, right, is love, it is compassion, it is kindness, it is helping, right? It is being a leader in your own life, being a leader in your community. It is about having like a servant heart, right?
Mhm.
But also receiving things as well.
Mhm.
And being this person where you have reached your greatest destiny.
Mhm.
And I believe for me, part of my greatest destiny is helping other people reach their greatest destiny. And having conversations like this, I think, are extremely valuable so that people maybe can see themselves, right, in you and in your story, and how you were able to get to this place in your life through your faith,
Mhm.
right? Through your beliefs. Because I talked, this post that I put today, it was about um, doubt and faith,
Mhm.
right? Because oftentimes people have doubt in their life, they have fear in their life, but I believe in the power of faith. And you can have a faith so strong that no matter what your circumstances are, no
Mhm.
matter what your surroundings are, no matter what you have been through,
Mhm.
you can accomplish all that you desire. You can be freed from, we call it the trappings of the underworld. You refer to it as strongholds, but it's the
Mhm.
same thing. Oftentimes, we're saying the same thing. We're just using different words, and people are scared by the different words because
Mhm.
they don't have an understanding, and they're too scared to even be curious to ask and to see for
Mhm.
themselves, right? What it really is. And
Right. Yeah. So even when people mention the devil, right? And so I shared with you that, they said when I learned about spiritual warfare, when I learned about strongholds, and that it was all people that I trusted. And so, and they continued to help me grow in that way. And so I shared that had I not had trust in those people, I've been like, I don't know about that devil thing. And that sounds a little crazy. People walk around with some horns. That's a little bit over too much for me, but thank you for sharing. Spiritual warfare was like, what do you mean? Like, it's like gangster? Like, what is that? And so they're like, no, it's when, you're going towards something good and then something kind of overcomes you. And then but had you not enlightened me, then I would have been like, I'm just having a really jacked up week. And so, but almost, and then when you continue to grow in your faith, then I would learn, like I could almost like see when it's coming. I mean, right. And so you asked about the gifts of it, the gifts in the Bible, they're talking about spiritual gifts. So one of them is also a gift of exhortation. So I always thought I was super bossy, right? Because people are like, "You so bossy, girl," and I'm like, "I am not bossy. I am highly encouraging." But thank you though. And then learning the gift of exhortation. So I would exhort you, and I would say, "Jen, you need to do this." And so, and I've thankfully have had people respect my level of exhortation and right my bossiness and my encouragement, and they're like, "Ooh, when Leena says something, man, it manifests." And so friends, the way they articulate it is when Leena says something, do it because it comes to pass and it blossoms, right? And so she's prophetic, we're not sure, but we just know when Leena prays, it comes down, and when she says it'll manifest. And so they're like, cool. And so they do it. And so up until I learned that gift of exhortation. So And in dream planting, when I shared with you like the date, I'm like, what? Like I've had this happen, and it kind of creeped me out because I was like, oh, I've been here before. And then now I had wished I had wrote it down, because now, so it's the same, right? So there's a similar pattern there. So here it's like now I know when cray cray is going to happen, like a situation is going to arise, because as you start, foster and cultivate that innate ability, because it is an innate ability, but you have to foster and cultivate that. Same thing with dream planting. Now writing stuff down, and I'm like, wow, like, okay, there's meaning to that. There's meaning to when you're meaningful things that happen when you're awake, when you're mindful about it, and there's meaningful things that happen when you're dreaming and you're planning your dream because you're mindful and you're practicing that. But it's a spiritual practice, it's a faith practice, and it's not something you're like, let's see what happens. It's like, well, we know what happened before when you did that, so let's not go down that route. So right when we're like, let's see, it is what it is, and I'm like, no, it is what you practice. And so so really understanding that it is a practice, it is something that is sacred. I love that you are very responsible over your spiritual gifts, and that you don't just throw it out there, and because people can be reckless. I love how you say that, because you're like, that is very reckless and irresponsible if just letting people do that. Because people do that. People do it in Christian faith too, and they walk into like, I know Jesus. I'm like, no, they got some ratchetness up in there. They got some bad intentions, but because you didn't pay attention to that, right? And because that person was reckless, we believe that, and they had bad intentions, and so it happens. And so that's why, I love that you say how you're responsible, and just how you're like, I am not reckless. And so, and some people, they don't understand that, as a person. And so how much responsibility that is involved, and how important it is to not be reckless, so that you don't model that for other people. So
I
yeah.
think, in my experience, right, and working with so many people, is that as a teacher and as a guide, I talk about that. I do have a sacred responsibility to them and to help them on the journey, knowing that when they go on the journey, different things can come up for them because, people have experienced trauma, they have experienced abuse. And when you're talking also about freeing somebody from their underworlds, freeing them from these beliefs or these traumas or the consequences of certain things, shame, fear, guilt, all these emotions that can come up. It's like, you don't just give somebody something and then be like, okay, deuces, I'm out, right? Like, figure it out on your own. Like,
Right.
okay, like, because I understand, because I've seen it, because I've been a witness to it, of what can come up for people and what they can experience, and them not knowing. As an example, I had a student that used one of the practices, and basically what we did was we worked with water, and I
Mhm.
had her get her water, and whether you want to say pray over it or performing a ritual or ceremony, it's pretty much the same thing. It is
Correct.
really having the intent of what it is that you want to call into your life. But in order to call something into your life, you have to make room for it.
Right.
Have to be willing to let go of the past. You have to be willing to let go of the beliefs that you have, and your fears and your worries and your doubts and all of these sorts of things, to make room for something to come in. And so most people, they want to manifest and they want to just call things in. But I
Right.
tell people, if you have a cup and it's filled, how are you going to put anything else in it? So you have to let it go. And I shared this practice where you can get some water,
Mhm.
and before you go to sleep, you can pray over it or perform a ceremony. And you are asking that while you're sleeping, you're having dreams that are very vivid and clear. But what is it that you want to dream? So, dreaming of releasing, purifying you, and healing you, because one of the elements we work with is rain. So, you can call the element of rain into this cup of water that you have. And for us, we say Shiwalwe because Shiwalwe and Nahuatl means come here. And
Mhm.
we do it 4 times because it's believed, like, 4 is a very sacred number in the tradition. There's the 4 elements, there's the 4 seasons, there are the four movements of the day, which is the morning sun, the midday sun, the sunset sun, and the night sun. And
Mhm.
so when you are calling in, right, what it is that you want to create, and you work with the element of rain, which helps things to grow in the perfect balance of beauty, and it can purify your emotions. It can purify your relationships. As
Mm-hmm.
you're praying over it and you're saying, come here, you're thinking about, again, intent. What is it that you want to be creating as you're drifting off to sleep? And so one of my students, she wanted to shed excess weight. She wanted to shed. Well, weight oftentimes is a physical manifestation of something spiritual, right? A spiritual heaviness.
Right.
And so when she was doing that, and you would place the water either underneath your bed or sort of at the head of the bed, right on the floor. Or as an example, if this table was my bed, then I would put it right here, and I would fall asleep, and it would be right sort of at my crown. So the next day she put in the group, she's like, hey, I did the water thing. And she was like, I woke up a couple times. I felt a little sick. She goes, in the middle of the night, I felt this kind of pain across my back, and I threw up. Is that normal? And I was like, well, that's normal, because for us, it's called Chichimeca. It's shedding. So when I went to Mexico, I was there for about 10 days. It was a pilgrimage with my teacher.
Yeah.
And from the first day I got there, the next day I was sick. The entire time I was sick. And there was like a joke. They're like, oh, and they say the ones that get the sickest are having like the biggest transformation. They're shedding all this stuff, because we were working with such heavy energy, because we were working with ancestral energy, because we were out there for Dia de los Muertos, and we were doing practices every day. And it was with it was my teacher and his teacher that were there as well. And so I just remember thinking, luckily I was only sick at night, right? Like a little bit during the day, but luckily my sickness held out until I got back to where we were. So I wasn't sick on these big long bus rides and all this other sort of stuff. But I just remember thinking, okay, like somebody that was on that trip actually left the next day because they couldn't handle it. They had been on this trip 3 times, and this was the 3rd time that they had left because it was just too much. Now, this was more of a gentle process, right? Her kind of throwing up. And I was like, that's actually a really good thing. That's you detoxing. You're going through a detox process. People don't understand that when you do stuff like that, it can be a detox process. Now, if she didn't have somebody to ask the question to, she wouldn't know. She probably would have been scared. You know, she would have been like, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. Maybe I did something wrong, because that's people's always, did I do something wrong? It's like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. It's okay. Like nothing's going to happen. But just to kind of have that support, to have that encouragement, to have that clarity, right? I personally feel a responsibility. I don't want to be teaching people stuff and then they go out and stuff like that happens. And then now they're worried, or they don't know, right? And so now they're having fear in their space and all of these things. I just think that as a wisdom keeper and sharing the teachings, anybody that takes on a role that is helping people, you have to be responsible. You have to be in integrity, and you cannot just do things with people and just walk away, because I've seen a lot of programs where people will open up certain traumas and they don't know how to deal with it. Like coaches will open up different things. They don't know how to deal with it. And then they just say, okay, sorry, you're on your own now. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You're creating really bad, like karmic energy for yourself when you do stuff like that. So, intentional leadership. Right. Can you talk about what you feel are core values of an intentional leader and what that really means? Because I think we talk about results a lot, but what are the values of being an intentional leader?
So I love what you just shared about the water, because I have a story for you later. And so, because I'm like, oh, that's why that happened. So I did practice the water with anointing oil. So to answer your question about what is an intentional leader, what does it require? So my definition is lead through servant leadership with humbleness and humility. So as a leader, it is very important to continue to have a humble spirit and in character, and to lead with humility. And so what experiences have you had? So did you come from maybe a different socioeconomic background? So you're going to have a different lens that may provide more equity, because now you're serving at a higher capacity. Typically, when you're serving in executive leadership, there's compensation that's stronger, so that might be uncomfortable for you or a different realm for you. You'll be able to provide a different lens and perspective to people because of that, because they're trying to climb the ladder as well. Have you gone through trials and tribulations that other people can relate to? That's leading through humility. And so, because at any moment it can all be taken away from us, kind of our materialistic things, right? Our homes, our cars. And so realizing that that is materialistic things. And I would say definitely, so it's humbleness, it's humility. I think you have to have a strong character, lead with integrity, and lead with compassion. And so during this global crisis, it is always checking in with your family and your teammates first, because really, like at the end of the day, like it can all just shut down. And so people are really having to learn how to just manage on a daily basis. And so, I think people are not talking about it enough. And, they're like, oh, we're going to power through. And I'm like, well, a couple of weeks ago, we said this was going to be, this too shall pass in 2 weeks. And that was really an honest, gauge of what was happening. Right. And so those who are in leadership might have lost some trust with their peers or their team, because that's not true. And so you have to be able to lead with integrity, humbleness, humility, compassion, and through your character. And so when you say something untruthful, it will cost you a relationship. And some people might be like, they don't know what's going on. Just say you don't know what's going on. It's an uncertain time. And so when you continue that, and it definitely, not only do you develop a stronger relationship with people, but also it starts with your home. So one of this consistent things that I say is learn to be a hero in your home first. And so that doesn't mean, if you have children or not, whoever you are, a single family household, or you're a tribe of 12, like people are copying what you do. And so if you're a single person and you are a family of one, your other family members who look at what you do are looking at how you lead your home, how you lead your life, and how you treat people. So it's very important that you learn how to lead first there, rather than the community, because it's fine if you're a hero in the community, but if your family doesn't like you, then you're not really a leader. Because people are like, oh, that's kind of true. I'm like, no, it's true. It goes on the news when you do something crazy. And so, right. And or the kids are on Facebook like, I don't even like them. So that's very possible, right? And so we see it on Dr. Phil quite often. And so really is just, just being that compassionate person from home and learning from there first. I think that's the best part of being a hero and a leader is learning how to foster and cultivate that right in your four walls. So
that's beautiful. I love, that's hot butter right there, Leena. Learn to be a hero in your own home.
Yeah. So, I
love it.
I think it's, because sometimes we're like, well, what can I do to be a better leader in the community? And so I'm like, well, your wife doesn't like you. I want to check with homegirl first. And so, it's just, I've seen it and I've learned it through reading. And so when I read that, I said, that is so important. Because really, I mean, when you have children, I think you want them to be a good leader, and it's then starts with you. And so every time you talk about leadership, I don't care what title you have, it starts with you first. And if you don't learn how to be a great leader, or be a great team member, you can't be a great leader. And so that's why I always say humble in spirit, learning that, having that growth and wanting to learn more, and becoming better. And so I think, us humbling ourselves through this process. So some people think about humbleness means like not being arrogant, right? And so if we are not humble through our Christian faith, going, what does that mean? Like, how is there any parallel pathways? Is this similar? Like asking those intelligent. So that's using your intellectual and your spiritual discipline and asking those questions and going, Jen, what is that? And so it's a conversation, but your conversation can lead to immense abundance. And so really exercising your intelligence and your spiritual discipline. So when I learned about spiritual discipline, people thought I meant reading the Bible. It's like, no, it's asking the right questions. It's using wisdom. So you consistently say that how, you're a wisdom warrior, right? Is that how you articulate that?
Yeah, dream warrior, but I like wisdom warrior. That's a good one. I'm gonna use that.
Being a wisdom warrior, because you know, because you can be smart, but you're not using that, right? So there's knowledge, and then you're not applying. So wisdom is having, is oftentimes we think of it as someone who's older, but there's a lot of people who gain that wisdom at a young age, and you know, partner with that person and ask those questions. And so the more you learn as a leader, and the more you grow with wisdom, the more you can serve. Because ultimately, it's about serving people. People are like, no, I tell them what to do. I'm like, no, you have to work with them and for them. Like, well, as soon as you humble yourself and learn that these people actually help you, like, then you understand that. And so so I think that's also what works well for me, is because I can relate to people, hood to Hollywood, I got you. And so, and they're like, they're like low-key gangster. I'm like, some of them are high-key gangster. You see my TikTok video with Leena Mendoza, so I'm good.
Right.
So yeah, it's just, we're all human beings, and you know, and the better human being you become, the better you can serve people. So I think it's
Mhm.
important.
Yeah. And a lot of those quote unquote gangsters have a lot of wisdom actually, because they've had to learn through life lessons, and people don't understand that. You know, it doesn't matter somebody's background, it doesn't matter what their title is. People have wisdom. Like, if you actually get to know somebody and have a conversation with them, and, you know, for me, I tell people I'm a teacher and a student of the practices always. I will always be teacher and student. And I learn just as much from my students as they learn from me. I might be more knowledgeable in these particular practices, but I guarantee you they're more knowledgeable in other areas, and they have wisdom that I too can learn from. And so, and also, I've been in a position where I've had coaches or mentors or even elders, and they just felt like they knew it all. And you know, they just had this sort of arrogance, what we call the jade turkey. So the jade turkey is our ego. It has to be in balance. You know, ego isn't always a bad thing. If it's in balance, it can be a good thing, it can serve you. But your ego is looking at it, I'm not better than or less than anybody, like we all just are. And so to have that idea of I'm better than you have to listen to me, it's like, like you'll learn real like fast, quick, and hard that that is not the way, right? And that's going to come back around and bite you. And I also believe in this idea of learning from our life experiences, learning from the life experiences of others. And part of the tradition, what it for a fulfilling life is creating amazing, beautiful memories. And like, I really love what you said about being the hero in your own home, because it's like, are you doing these things that you want to be seen as this particular person, maybe in the community or in your business, but how are you seen at home? How is it that your kids see you? How is it that your partner sees you, right? Are these characteristics, you know, for us being a good leader, actually, you had to have what's known as read in your astrological chart. So thousands of years ago, they would place you in positions in the community based on what was in what we call the tono mulatto, which was the astrological chart. And if you didn't have read in your chart, you couldn't be a good leader, because read represented having emotional intelligence. You know, now we know that you can cultivate that. You can cultivate emotional intelligence. But a lot of people, they don't have that. You might be book smart, but
Right.
if you don't have emotional intelligence, then you're going to be lacking as a
Right.
whole. If you're not in control of your own emotions, you know, if you're constantly in victim mode,
Right.
right, then you're not going to be whole. You're never going to get there. So it's taking responsibility too. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to be respectful of your time, because I know that we had an hour scheduled, and part of being a good leader is being respectful of other people's time and their energy and what they have allotted. So Leena, I just really want to thank you. And anybody that wants to get in contact with you, how can they reach you?
So they can reach me at lenamendoza.com on my website. I'm on LinkedIn. Definitely on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. And so, you know, you'll definitely see my personality on the different platforms. And so my first question always with people is, how are you doing? So that's how I lead, is lead with compassion first.
I love it. Beautiful. And it's Leena, Leena Mendoza, Mendoza. So you can follow her on all social platforms. Leena is, like I said, an amazing person. She's somebody that I'm thankful I get to call friend. And she is a peer and a mentor and a student, and you can be all of those things. And so Anybody that wants to know more about the program, you can go to dreamuyouuniversity.com. And thank you so much, Leena, for joining. It is a blessing to have you here and to be a part of your dream journey and for you to be a part of mine. So
thank you.
everybody have an amazing day. May you and all of your dreams blossom with beauty. Tlaskomati, which means thank you, and Nahuatl o Mateo, which is the two forces that join to create.
Awesome.
Bye.
Everybody have a great day.